Praise the Lord. 36 years of marriage. In the Roman Catholic Church, he is Executive Director for the National Training Center for Catholic Evangelization and the San Lorenzo Ruiz Lay Formation Center. He is also a commission member of the Commission on Marriage and Family Life Ministries in the Archdiocese of Manila. For the Couples for Christ, which is an expert of this lay community called Ligaya ng Panginoon or Joy of the Lord, Lito is a pastoral leader. He is the chapter director for the formation of this special Couples for Christ for Manila West. He is also the mission director for the Couples for Christ in Mindanao and the coordinator for its formation here in our beloved second country, the United States of America. I am now truly privileged to present to you Jose Cuyugan Urgino. Welcome.
Continues to do in my life and in the life of the members of my family. I come also bringing the love of my wife, who has met some of you, and she would like all of you to know that next time she'll be here. She's attending to our newest grandson because our daughter just gave birth in LA last week, and she was in she had a cesarean section, so she's now the yaya in Los Angeles. To tell you about what the Lord has done in my life, it's something that will take actually maybe 3.5 days to talk about. Because He has truly been good, He has truly been great, He has truly loved me so much. But I will try in a very short span of time to try to give you the highlights of what He has done in my life. I had to bring a short codico to make sure that I have the dates really set up. 13 years, 11 months, and 35 days ago, I was what the world would normally call successful, quote unquote. I was senior vice president of a multinational bank. I was in charge of all the branches in Europe and in Asia. I would spend only 10 days of 4 months in the Philippines with my family. And most of the time I would be living in the 4 walls of a hotel room. I had a beautiful house. I had 5 cars. I had signing privileges in all the best hotels, and I always took first class whenever I took the plane. I always felt it was the best way to fly. To me, sickness, pain, poverty, God, they were things other people needed. I never needed them. I felt that everything I had was something that was the product of my own sweat and blood. I had no uncle for a general. I had no father for a millionaire. And I felt that everything I had was just from my own sweat and blood. I had 9 beautiful children who were all in good schools. I had a wife who was beautiful and understanding. And to make sure that I really was successful, I had the last ingredient needed. I also had mistresses. You're not successful unless you had at least one. That was how things were back home, and especially in the particular milieu I was in. And so every day when I would shave, I'd look at myself in the mirror and I'd say to myself, Lito, you're great. Cute ka pa. And things were going so well, I thought it would never end. I was always successful in anything I handled. I was always successful in anything I'd set my mind on. But one day, on that specific day, in October of 1979, the Lord pulled the rug from under my feet. My chairman of the board and my president, both South Americans, disappeared with $875 million. And I was co-signatory in all the transactions that they had fixed up for themselves. And so in a matter of 17 days, I had 59 cases filed against me in 11 countries. Our clients could not run after them, for they disappeared. I was the third highest officer in the world for that bank, and so I was the one they could run after. And that started a nightmare in my life and in the life of my family. Every now and then I'd get arrested by the Interpol. I was big time. And I would be handcuffed and I would be brought to the country where cases were filed against me. And once again I was traveling. Once again I was traveling, yes, but this time economy class. And this time handcuffed. It's very embarrassing to travel handcuffed. I really hope and pray none of you will ever experience that. I remember one time in the international airport in Manila, while waiting for our flight, a group of friends came in and I asked my arresting officer to please cover my hands with my coat because I didn't want them to see me handcuffed. But he didn't need to do that anyway because my friends all of a sudden were admiring the beautiful ceiling of the airport. None of them recognized me, naturally. And so all of a sudden I lost all my friends. All of a sudden everybody was just keeping me at a distance. All of a sudden I realized that all the things I knew, all the studies I had, all the degrees, the masteral courses couldn't help me. No one could help me. And all of a sudden I realized how important the family was. All of a sudden I realized there was someone at home who really loved me and cared for me in spite of. All of a sudden I realized that my wife, who had been praying for me for 23 years, was still there. She hadn't given up. She hadn't given up on me. And my children, most of whom I thought were weaklings, because they were all studying in the best schools and were provided for very well, stopped studying and started to work to assist us, because in only 14 months I had lost everything that I had worked for. In Xerox copies alone for my cases in Europe, I spent over 400,000 because they always required I don't know why, 71 copies for every particular document. And for a while there, I was grasping for breath. For a while there, I was reaching out in the dark for I don't know what. Until in jail in Singapore, an inmate handed me a Bible. And for the first time in my life, Lito or Hino, graduates of the Catholic school, in the elementary and the high school, college, even my masteral course was taken in a Catholic school. For the first time in my life, I opened a Bible. And I started reading a Bible. And I remember I was struck so much about Matthew 28, verse 16 and following. I was struck very hard by that particular statement, where it said, "Go and make disciples of all nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Teach them to carry out everything I have commanded you, and know that I will be with you till the end of the earth." I was struck because I realized that that particular statement was not given just to anybody, it was given to all. It was supposed to be each and everybody's duty to make disciples of all nations. It was not a request. It did not say, "Please go." It did not say, "On Saturday when you have nothing to do, will you kindly go?" Maybe it's because it was in English that it did not have any impact when I read it the first time, or when I heard it the first time in Mass or in my religion class. Most of us Filipinos hear instructions in English because our schooling is in English, and maybe that's the reason why. In Tagalog, it has more impact. Humayo kayo at gawin niyong mga disipulo ko ang lahat ng bayan. May kasamang tadyak. But in English, it says go. And so it's not as strong. I was struck by it because I started to look back and I realized what kind of a life I had led. I looked back and I started to remember the kind of life that my children were in. I had one son who had already finished college at that time, who was still involved in fraternity rumbles. I don't know if some of you were still in the Philippines in 1978 when the ROTC department of the University of the Philippines was machine gunned. That was my son. I had two sons who were dope addicts. I caught one of them injecting through his gums because his arms and his legs couldn't take it anymore. I had another son who was involved in the arts. And because of that, he had friends going around with him who were very difficult to identify because you wouldn't know which ones were men and which ones were women. They all look and smell the same. And my other children were not doing well in school either. And I said, I have not done my duty. It was while I was reading scriptures also that I realized what the duty of a father was. That the father's main duty was not really to provide, that's not the main duty, but his main duty is introducing God to his family and his family to God, especially his sons. And that got me. And I remember I really felt so bad about it. I really felt so bad about it that when I was brought back to Manila after my incarceration in Singapore, I told my wife about it and I told her how bad I felt. And she said, maybe what you need to do is to get down on your knee and ask God for forgiveness. And that's exactly what I did. I said, Lord, I did not know this thing. And I'm really sorry for them. For 23 years, I have reared my children in the exact opposite way. For 23 years, I have relegated the teachings about God to the schools where my children were studying, not realizing that the first Christian school of my children was my home, and that the first Bible that they read was my life. And they have a saying in Filipino, and I'd like to say it in Filipino first before I translate it in English. Napakahirap ipalaganap ang mabuting balita kung ang sariling buhay mo ay masamang balita. It's very difficult to spread the good news when your own life is bad news. My life was bad news. And it was really difficult to spread the good news to my children. And it wasn't surprising that my children were leading that kind of life. And while in that particular state in my life, I got invited into a Christian life program, which is an expanded Life in the Spirit seminar. That was in 1981, and I was invited to a breakfast just like this at the Makati Sports Club. And I remember my sponsor telling me, as we were leaving, did you like what you heard? I said, well, one thing I know now is this: I'm not the only one with problems in this world. That particular group was called the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals. And I used to say, it should have been called the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen with Problems. And he said, would you like to come back? And I said, I would like to, but I don't think I can afford it. And thus I became the first scholar of the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals, because he started inviting me weekly for the breakfast. And in that breakfast, I began to see more about how God works in the lives of people. In that breakfast, I began to realize that truly God calls His children. He had been calling me for a long time. He called me in the Cursillo in 1965. I didn't look up. I changed my life for about 17 days. And I went back to what I used to do. He called me to the marriage encounter in 1970. And I was good for about 2 weeks maybe. And I went back. And I guess that's why the Lord had to throw an entire tractor on my head, so that I would look up and say, yes, Lord. Yes, what seat you want? And it was at this point in time, when all these cases were on my shoulders, and I knew that any one of those 59 cases would bring me at least 25 years in jail, that I made a promise, and I said, Lord, if you are really there, if you really exist, get me out of this, and I'll serve only you. And I found out you should never talk to God like that. Because In 8.5 months, I won 56 of my 59 cases, which was an impossible feat. My lawyers were just shocked on how I did it. In most of my cases in Europe, I defended myself because I didn't trust the lawyers who would be talking to the lawyers of the other side and making agreements behind my back. I won 56 of those 59 cases. And so when I came back to the Philippines, by the way, I was taking my Christian Life program at that time. It was an expanded LSS for 14 weeks. And I remember I was never absent. I only reflected on it later on. I had been arrested 5 times and brought to other countries for trial during those 14 weeks, and I was never absent. I would be arrested on a Saturday, be brought to the country where I would be arraigned on a Monday. The advantage in Europe is you have hearings morning and afternoon. And then by Thursday, I would know if I was going to be acquitted or set free. I would be brought back to the Philippines Thursday evening or Friday morning. And I would attend the Christian Life program Friday evening. Sometimes coming from the airport with my things with me, and my group members would say, "Saan ka galing, brother? Where'd you come from?" France. Zurich. Anong negosyo mo? What business do you have? I couldn't tell them why I was going there anyway. I just told them where I came from. They did not know until after. But that alone was a miracle. That alone was a miracle. And so when companies, banks, insurance companies began to once again offer me jobs as I was beginning to win cases one after the other, they couldn't understand when I said, "I'm sorry, but I made an agreement with God that I would serve Him. I don't know yet how, but I will serve Him." And they would scratch their heads, and even my wife couldn't understand that. She was saying, "Honey, we still have 7 going to school." But I said, "I'm still searching. I still don't know, but the Lord is telling me that I should serve Him." Now, I'm not asking you to leave your jobs and to serve the Lord. Now, it was a calling given to me. And it was in this particular point in time also, when I had lost already everything and all that was remaining was my house, that I received a statement from DSIS that the 1-year period given for me to repay my loan, which I couldn't pay anymore, had already lapsed, and that there was going to be that the house was going to be auctioned off. And I remember it was painful, when you're still living in your house and people would come in and look at your house and say, "Oh, this chandelier should go. Oh, the wall is ugly, we should remove that, and then we'll add another room here." And they're talking about how they would renovate your house already, and you're still living there. And I remember I was praying and I was saying, "Lord, I lost everything already. This is the only thing left. Please don't take it away from me." It's the only abode I had. It's the only thing that gave me the feeling that I had something yet. No matter how many cases I would go to, I know I would be able to go home and enter that house. And I remember I was in prayer when I smelled Indonesia. I don't know if any of you have been to Indonesia, but in Indonesia there's a particular smell of clove, because the clove is placed in their cigarettes, and they smoke a lot, Indonesians. And so you smell clove all over the place, inside the airplane, inside your hotels, inside the stores, everywhere. And I could smell it very strongly. And Indonesia is a place where I used to spend a lot of my time when I was in the bank because we helped finance several of their munitions factories. I was particularly involved in two of them when our bank loaned them $400 million for it. And I could smell it so strongly. I was in prayer and I stopped for a while and then I told my wife, Edith, do you smell what I smell? She said, yeah, I thought I was the only one who smelled it. I said, I wonder what it's all about outside. So I went out and I started looking around if there was a fire going on, where there was clove, or some of my children perhaps had a toothache and left the container for the toothache drops open. There was none. That evening I received a phone call, and my phone call went like this. Hello, Mr. Lito. Good evening. I said, who's this? Subroto calling you. Oh, Mr. Subroto, I said, well, are you calling from Indonesia? No, in Zurich. Why, I don't see you anymore, Mr. Lito. How is Mrs. Lito? Mrs. Subroto was one of the people I had dealt with. He's one of the only living heroes of Indonesia. Dr. Subroto, the biggest highway in Indonesia is called Subroto Highway. He's a very rich man. He was our middleman in most of our transactions in Indonesia. And so I told him, I'm sorry I was not able to see you because many things are, what happened? He said, story to me. That's the way he speaks English. I said, I cannot story to you because long distance, very expensive. He said, I call, not you. I pay, not you. So I said, okay, you know what happened is this. I started to tell him the story. I said, line very bad. Maybe I call again. I said, okay. So I closed the phone. And I told my wife, that's odd. I smelled Indonesia, and then I get a call from an Indonesian. 3 evenings after that, by the way, that was the month when I was given by DSIS the last date to pay the entire amount of my loan. April 17 was the day. Let me see my código. Yes, April 17 was the day when I was supposed to pay. And that day was April 12. 3 days after I got another call. He said, oh, Mr. Lito, line better. I said, yes, line is better. So, story to me. I said, all right, but no, please to come to hotel. I no sleep. Worried, you problem. I come Philippines. So please come hotel, Peninsula. So I went to the Peninsula Hotel, and there, while he was seated by his bed, I started to tell him what happened to me. And he was just holding his pipe, and he just went, And I said, my God, this guy calls me over here to tell him the story of my life, and it's so difficult to tell him my story, and all he does is, But after I finished, he said, Mr. Lito, tomorrow I go Singapore. Tomorrow, meaning the day after tomorrow. I come back, Philippines. Please, wife, you meet me at airport. I said, what for? Oh, meet me airport. Please to tell hotel downstairs, no leave hotel. Stay hotel, meaning he wanted this room. So I brought him to the airport, and 2 days, the day after, I told my wife, Sobroto wants us to pick him up at the airport, but I have a problem. I have no more car. And taxi would be very expensive. And what do you know? A friend of mine passes by and he says, he wanted me to help him in some of his financial problems. And I didn't want anything to do with finance anymore. But he said, please just help me on how I will go about this problem. And I was telling him about it. And after that, he said, by the way, I'm going to Makati. Right? Sabi ko, I told him, I'm going to Makati, but I'm going to the airport. I'm supposed to pick up some bags. Oh, use my car. And so I used his car together with my wife. We picked up some Lito and brought him to the hotel. And I remember when we reached the lobby and I started to look for a chair where I could sit in the lobby, he said, no, please to companion me. So we went up the room. Please ask Mrs. Lito companion also. And so we went up, and when we arrived at his hotel room, he opened his briefcase, and it was stacked with money. All it had was money, his passport, a gold watch, which he gave me. He said, please to wear. You will not look like executive anymore. I brought a clock for you. And so I wore the gold watch, and then he grabbed a bunch of cash from his briefcase, and he handed it to me, saying, please pay house. And then he grabbed again another batch. He said, please buy car. And I was looking at it, and I was looking at it for a while, and then I went to the side of his bed where they keep this, in a hotel room they would have these letterheads and envelopes and ball pen, and I grabbed one letterhead and I started to write. He said, what you write? I said, I owe you. He said, I know, ask why you write. And so I said, you're giving this to me? Yes. And so I was holding it, and so what he did was he removed the rest of the money from his briefcase. He placed the money he gave me in the briefcase, and he handed me the briefcase. He said, go, pay house. And so I was holding the briefcase, and I was walking to the elevator. My wife was holding on to me like anything because she was almost collapsing. And when we reached the elevator, she whispered to me in Filipino, parang tayong nanalo sa sweepstake. It's like we won in the sweepstake. And I said, yeah. But we had a problem because I had already sent back the driver of my friend to his office, and we were going home with a stock full of money, and we didn't have money for taxi. And so she said, never mind. We had the niece of my wife who was living with us, helping out with the housework. She said, maybe we can borrow from Celia for the taxi. So we took a taxi. When we were in the taxi, my wife said, silipin mo kung nandiyan pa yung pera. Please speak if the money is still there. And so I just opened it for about half an inch. It was still there. And so, to make a long story short, I was able to pay the house on time on the 17th of the morning of the 17th. And but because I had to pay a lot of other debts, I couldn't buy what he wanted, because he said, buy Mercedes. So I couldn't buy a Mercedes. I bought a Toyota, and I brought it to him to the airport right away, and I said, come down, see the car. And he went down and he said, why Mercedes in Philippines is small? I said, it's a Toyota. I couldn't buy a Mercedes because I had to pay a lot. Why you not tell me I pay? I said, no, that's enough. That's too much. No, that's not enough. Tomorrow, you, Mrs. Lito, and children, we go where to vacation? I said, anywhere, where do you like? I read Baguio. He said, very nice. Baguio, I said, yes, very up. Yes, I said, very up. And yes, we hire car, we go. I said, I have plenty children, 9. Cannot be in car. Oh, we hire coach. I said, coach, and we go, and that's what he did. We got one and we went to Baguio. And boy, that was the first time. Oh, my daughter is here. Praise God. Hi. For the first time, I had my children with me, and we went to Baguio, and he was there. We went to the best hotels, and then he just said, order anything, and that was the first. My children after eating said, "Pwede ba?" Someone, yes, and after that, the next day he came to me and he said, "Need to go Indonesia tomorrow, but you, Mrs. Lito, children stay. I leave gold card to hotel clerk. Charge everything. Stay here. I need go Indonesia." I said, "No, I'll go with you." "No, I stay. But I call you. You go to Peninsula, buy Peninsula for me." So, I like hotel, he said. I said, because I knew it was being sold, and he said he wanted to buy it. I thought he was joking, but then I started receiving telexes days after, instructing me exactly on what to do. But that's another story which I'll tell you about if you invite me again. But after about 5 days there, my children went and I went back home, and we were just praising God like anything. We were singing, we were thanking the Lord, we were having family prayers, and then he didn't come back when he said he would. And I waited. And I called, he wasn't around. And I searched for him, months went, Christmas came, and we started calling his family. And his wife told me, "Subroto, not seen 2 years already." I said, "Why? Not know." So I called his office in Switzerland, and I got the same message that he had not been seen for 2 years. I said, "What's this?" And I just realized, of the 190 million people in Indonesia, 99.7% Muslim. I had a friend who was Catholic, Subroto. And God, I think in this age of computers, in this age of advanced medicine and things like that, God still sends his angels and still comes up with miracles. And he sent that person to me because every year from that time on, until 1989, when we received already from his lawyers a statement that he has been declared dead because he has not been found. But every year from that time on, 1982, my children and I would have a special mass for him. We would still send him Christmas cards in his name to his home. We never saw him again. But that is again a message from the Lord. Because he gave me back my dignity. He gave me back. Up to now we pray for him, wherever he is, and we know that he is with the Lord, but we pray for him and his family and his children. And it was at this point in time that my wife started to remind me about my life. She said, "Now I am convinced, Lito, that God is calling you." She started reminding me of the things that my mother told her about. She reminded me of the fact that I was born 68 years ago. I mean, 58 years ago. 58 years ago, at a time where there were no equipment in hospitals for children who are born 7 months old. I was born 3 pounds 11 ounces. I was supposed to be born February, but I was born December. And my mother used to tell me they thought I would not last one day. There were no incubators at that time, so what the doctor did was to put me, to surround me with hot water bottles. And I survived. When I was 5, Japan declared war on the United States. And my father, thinking that Manila was dangerous, decided to go to his hometown in Atimonan, Quezon. And on the way to Atimonan, Quezon, on December 17, 1941, near Lucena, my father was driving the car and he said, "I think those are army trucks ahead of us." And right after he said that, we heard Japanese Zeros circling the area. And so my father said, "Jump out of the car." And we all jumped out of the car. And the Japanese Zeros straight machine gunned the trucks and destroyed the trucks and our car. My mother, my father, my grand-aunt, and myself were safe. And we had to hitch a ride one after the other until we reached Atimonan, Quezon. God saved us there. When we reached Atimonan, Quezon, which my father thought was the best place to be in and the safest because the Japanese may land in Manila, the Japanese Imperial Forces all of a sudden decided that the first area they would land in was Atimonan, Quezon. That was the first landing of the Japanese forces. And we were waken up at about 1 o'clock in the morning by the parish priest and asked to run because the Japanese were landing and the Filipino forces that were defending the beaches of Atimonan and Quezon were just a handful. And we rushed to the mountains of, listen to this, Yahweh is the name of the mountain. And in Yahweh, in Atimonan and Quezon, I got sick of double pneumonia twice, and I lived. We got back to Manila in 1944, just before the liberation, and again, several times my life was saved, spared from death. In 1951, while I was a student in Sambeda, I was stabbed. And I was there sprawled in the street, and people were just watching. And the late Senator Manahan passed by and saw me, carried me, and brought me to the hospital, and I was saved. In 1972, because of the curfew, the martial law, I was going home at 11:30 in the evening, trying to beat the 12 o'clock curfew. And while going down the Guadalupe Bridge, after taking 17 Scotch sodas, I saw a jeep changing its tire, and I had to step on my brakes, and a Pepsi Cola truck behind me, running at the same speed, hit me. My car turned 3 times this way, 4 times, hit the side of the bridge. I was hit by the truck again, and the car went over the Guadalupe Bridge. If you were there that time, you must have read about that accident. I was the first man